Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm here to discuss the significance of reproduction in living organisms and the impact of variation in species for survival and evolution. Reproduction is the process by which organisms create descendants. It is an essential process that ensures the continued existence of a species. Reproduction can be either asexual or sexual. In asexual reproduction, only one parent is needed to produce a new organism. Whereas in sexual reproduction, two parents are needed. Asexual reproduction is common among single-celled organisms, although it is also seen in some multi-celled organisms like some plants and fungi. Sexual reproduction, on the other hand, is common among multicellular organisms like animals and humans. Both types of reproduction are essential for species survival and variation. Variation is needed for a species to adapt to changing environmental conditions and for natural selection to take place. Asexual reproduction produces organisms that are genetically identical to the parent, while sexual reproduction produces organisms with a unique combination of genetic material from both parents. This genetic variation creates a more diverse gene pool, which increases the species' ability to adapt to changing conditions and increases its chances for survival. In conclusion, reproduction is a critical process for species survival and evolution. Asexual and sexual reproduction are both important for species survival, as they provide genetic variation, enabling the species to adapt to changing conditions and increase its chances for survival. Reproduction enables living organisms to produce new individuals of the same species, thus ensuring the species' survival. The process involves the reproductive cells producing two copies of the DNA molecules, which are then divided into two cells. Although these copies are similar, they are not identical, and it is this tiny variation in the DNA which leads to the evolution of new species, as well as the transfer of certain traits from parent to child. Variation is of paramount importance. During DNA replication during reproduction, it is essential for keeping and safeguarding the body forms of living beings. However, the environment is ever-changing, with climate, temperature, and water levels fluctuating on a regular basis. These dynamic conditions can cause species to become extinct if they are unable to adjust to the new environment. But some individuals have variations which can make them more resistant and able to adjust to the changing environment. The assortment of species features permits a higher possibility of endurance, and the opportunity of development which continually shapes our present world. Thus, variation in species is necessary for the survival and development of new species. Asexual and sexual reproduction are two of the main types of reproduction in living organisms. Asexual reproduction involves a single parent, while sexual reproduction involves two individuals. Examples of asexual reproduction include fission, budding, regeneration, fragmentation, spore formation and vegetative propagation. These different types of asexual reproduction are essential for the survival and evolution of species, as they result in genetic variation and allow species to adapt to their environment. Fission is a form of asexual reproduction that occurs in unicellular organisms, from amoebas to paramecia. It involves a single organism dividing into two or more daughter cells. There are two types of fission, binary and multiple. In binary fission, the nucleus divides first, followed by the cytoplasm. In multiple fission, a single organism divides into many daughter cells, as seen with the malaria parasite Plasmodium. Variation in species created by both types of fission is essential for species survival and evolution. Budding is a method of reproduction in which a bud-like projection is formed on the body of the organism. This bud develops into a new individual, which eventually separates from its parent and becomes an independent organism. Examples of organisms that reproduce by budding include hydras and yeasts. Regeneration is an incredible ability found in some living organisms, enabling them to grow back parts of their body that have been damaged or lost. Species like the hydra, planaria, and starfish possess this ability. It is possible to create a new individual from a part of the organism that was initially damaged or cut off. This ability is a remarkable adaptation, helping organisms to survive and evolve. Fragmentation is an asexual reproduction method employed by multicellular organisms, where the body of the organism splits into smaller pieces upon maturation, with each individual fragment growing into a separate individual. An example species capable of fragmenting is Spirogyra. Compared to other forms of asexual reproduction, fragmentation is simpler and faster, thereby better equipping the species for survival. Spore formation is a form of asexual reproduction encountered in certain fungi and lower plants. It involves the establishment of sporangia, containing tiny spores. These spores are extremely resistant to drying and other environmental pressures, and when they come in contact with a wet surface, they can generate new organisms. Examples of creatures that reproduce by means of spore formation include Rhizopus, Mucor, Penicillium, and many others. Vegetative propagation is a technique wherein new plants are produced from certain vegetative parts of the plant, like the root, stem, or leaf. Instances include dahlia from the root, sweet potato from the root, potato from the stem, ginger from the stem, bryophyllum from the leaf, and begonia from the leaf. Normally, plants spread through vegetative propagation are more likely to flower and bear fruits before those grown from seeds. Additionally, it is a great way to propagate plants that do not produce seeds, such as rose, jasmine, and banana. The method of vegetative propagation can be done artificially through cutting, layering, or grafting. Flowering plants have developed a distinctive form of sexual reproduction. For sexual reproduction, they depend on the stamen and pistil, two necessary components of the flower. The stamen is the male reproductive part, producing pollen grains that contain the male germ cell or male gamete. The pistil is the female reproductive part, producing ovules with the female germ cell or female gamete. Through pollination, the male and female gametes can combine and form a seed. This process is essential for the survival and evolution of flowering plants. Pollination is a vital process for the reproduction of many species, involving the transfer of pollen particles from the male stamen to the female stigma of a flower. It is essential for fertilization and reproduction to take place, and pollination can be achieved by different methods such as wind, water, or insects. Self-pollination is when the particles are transferred to the stigma of the same flower, and cross-pollination is when particles are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another. As pollination is such an important part of the reproductive process, it is crucial for the survival and evolution of species. Fertilization plays an essential role in the reproductive cycle of living organisms. It is the merger of male and female gametes, also known as germ cells, to form the zygote. This is the first step towards the growth of the embryo, which will later become the seed and fruit. Fertilization is significant for the change of species, as this is when genetic material from both the mother and father is combined to create a unique genetic code of the zygote. This diversity allows species to adapt in order to survive and evolution progresses. The male reproductive system is essential for human reproduction. It consists of a pair of testes, which produce male reproductive cells, also known as sperms, and the hormone testosterone. These processes occur within the scrotum. The seminal vesicles and prostate glands then produce fluids to nourish and aid in the movement of the sperms. The vas deferens merges with the urethra inside a muscular organ called the penis, which contains an opening known as the genital pore. All of these components are necessary for successful human reproduction. The female reproductive system is a complex and vital part of the human body, consisting of 2 ovaries and oviducts, or fallopian tubes, which unite into the uterus. This uterus has an opening named the vagina, through which reproductive cells, or ova, are produced, as well as the hormone estrogen. Estrogen is essential for the menstrual cycles and fertility of women, and is an important factor in aiding the production of healthy offspring. Variation in offspring is key to the evolution and survival of species, making the female reproductive system essential for the survival of the human species. Reproduction is essential for species survival and variation, and understanding its importance is key for evolutionary success. Sexual intercourse initiates the process in humans, whereby sperms from the male enter the female's vagina and travel through the oviduct. Here, one sperm fuses with an egg and forms a zygote, which is then implanted in the uterus. The zygote starts to divide and form an embryo which is nourished by the mother's blood. After 9 months, a baby is born. After conception, a single cell quickly divides, becoming the zygote. This zygote then progresses through a multicellular stage known as the morula, followed by the blastula, then the gastrula. At each stage, the embryonic cells differentiate and begin to form into distinct structures that eventually make up the adult body. By the end of the gastrula process, the embryo has all of the cells required to form a fully developed baby. A woman's ovaries prepare an egg each month for potential fertilization. Should fertilization not take place, the uterus wall breaks down, resulting in the release of blood and mucus from the vagina. Referred to as menstruation, this process typically occurs roughly once a month and is a normal part of the reproductive cycle in humans. It serves an important role, helping to keep reproductive systems in good condition and functioning as they should. Reproductive health is essential for both individuals and the wider community. STDs, or sexually transmitted diseases, can be spread through sexual contact and can have serious consequences if untreated. These STDs include such diseases as gonorrhea, syphilis, warts and HIV/AIDS, and it is important to be aware of safe practices for the prevention of them. Prevention of pregnancy is also an important part of reproductive health. Various methods of contraception are available, including barrier methods, such as condoms, diaphragms and cervical caps, which physically block sperm from entering the uterus. Chemical methods, such as oral and vaginal pills, also help prevent pregnancy. Surgical methods such as vasectomies in males and tubectomies in females involve removing or tying a small part of a genital organ.